Hello, my name is Haining Wang. Today I'm going to present a study I co-authored with Xin from Shanghai Normal University and Alan from Indiana University Bloomington. The topic is cross-register authorship attribution using vernacular and classical Chinese texts. In this study, we found inferring authorship of vernacular Chinese texts from classical Chinese pieces is challenging. We found that using standard authorship attribution models based on function word frequency was inefficient. This finding has its implication for studies of Chinese vernacular fiction produced during 14th to early 20th century. Fictional works produced during the Ming and Qing dynasties are collectively referred as Ming-Qing fiction. Ming-Qing vernacular fiction is widely regarded as a pinnacle of classical Chinese literature. But this is only from today's perspective. At the time, composing in vernacular Chinese actually was regarded as unorthodox. So a great portion of fictional vernacular works were composed with a pen name or anonymously. Our survey on a selective bibliography about 500 vernacular fictions shows that about 2/3 of Ming-Qing vernacular fictions do not state its authorship clearly. But we know authors at the time didn't hesitate to sign their classical works. So why don't we leverage abundant literature written in classical to recover pseudonymously and anonymously composed vernacular fictions? Before going deeper, I'd like to introduce the vernacular and classical Chinese a little bit. In Imperial China, classical Chinese is a privileged register. For example, official documents and emperor's announcements are all written with classical. Vernacular written Chinese is like the written version of everyday speech, and written vernacular emerged from written dialogue in classical works. It was not until the middle 16th century before vernacular written Chinese became a recognized literary register. This is an excerpt from Mencius, which was written in classical Chinese. Relative to vernacular Chinese, classical Chinese has a denser lexicon. For example, we use ji to refer to having hunger in classical Chinese, but we pair it up with another character, 饿, to constitute a bigram, 饥饿, to express the same meaning, being hungry. Paired unigrams is very common in vernacular and modern Chinese. And classical Chinese has more part of speech ambiguity. For example, yi means clothes, it's a noun in vernacular and modern Chinese, but here it is used as a verb, meaning wear. And Wang is also a noun, meaning the king, the ruler. Here it's also used as a verb, meaning to reign, to rule a kingdom. Besides, word order is more flexible in classical Chinese. For example, 知 is the object and 有 is the linking verb. In vernacular and modern Chinese, 知 should be put, object should be put after the linking verb. But in classical Chinese, this is inversed. There are more differences we don't have space and time to touch on, but you can feel the difference between the two registers are considerable. Okay, let's go back to the research question. Can we infer the authorship of a vernacular text given classical texts? If this is possible, we can use classical works to recover the vernacular works of unknown authorship. We explore our research question with standard authorship techniques. Authorship attribution is a task that identifies the likely author of an anonymous text. Because an individual's writing style has been shown empirically to be distinctive, just like our fingerprints. Typically, there is a set of suspects, one of whom wrote the text. Our task is to determine whose writing style is the best match to the anonymous texts. This study aims to recover the vernacular authorship based on classical texts. We name it as cross-register authorship attribution, and we are going to test how hard this task is. For this purpose, we managed to organize a corpus of non-authors known to have written in both registers. All authors are male and lived between 1570 and 1870. All but one are from southern China. As Anna said, we spent 20 hours searching for female authors to include, but we were unable to find an author with available texts. This imbalance of region and gender reflects relevant social and economic circumstances of the period. The corpus contains 4.2 million characters of prose. It includes fiction and nonfiction, although some genres are not, these genres are not always distinct. Because distinguishing between fictional and non-fictional historical narrative is sometimes impossible. The topics are diverse, including jokes, the care of pregnant women, history, opera commentary, war diaries, and personal reflection, etc., etc. We refrain from picking texts that are disputed or rhymed. We also avoid revision of pre-existing texts or vernacular glosses of classical texts. Then we pre-process the corpus. Pre-processing includes removing title, heading, table contents, preface, postscript, editorial comments, rhymed words, and prose if they are not part of the main body. We also get rid of blank lines, redundant spaces, and indentation marks. Texts are then segmented into roughly 1,000 character chunks. We eliminate all punctuation to preserve the original structure because in Old Chinese, there's no punctuation. Finally, we organize all chunks into registers under each candidate's directory with informative file names. As for the features, we choose function words and characters because function words and characters have been shown to be very useful stylistic markers in previous studies. We transcribe 2 published lists of function words. One for classical Chinese, it contains about 479 function characters, so only unigrams. The other feature set is built for modern Chinese because we didn't find a vernacular Chinese function word dictionary. Since modern and vernacular function words overlap heavily, and the modern function word list is particularly comprehensive, we're not going to worry too much. It has 819 function word and characters. So we also use a feature set that is a union of about 2 feature sets. We call it combine. Before fitting into algorithm, features are normalized by dividing by training sample standard deviation after deducting the mean from them. By the way, we also released a Python package named function words on PyPI to automate the feature extracting process. It's well documented and you can try it out if you want some well-curated Chinese function words. For the classifier, we opt for standard logistic regression and standard linear SVM for their efficiency and simplicity. We use the default cost parameter for SVM and the default regularization parameter for logistic regression. We rely on scikit-learn to realize the process. We are interested in assessing the cross-register authorship attribution in the direction from classical to vernacular, and we use 2 sim-register accuracy as baselines. They are classical to classical and vernacular to vernacular authorship attribution. We predict the author of a 1,000 characters text on a model trained with 8,000 characters on different test beds. 8,000 Chinese character is sufficiently a lot because we don't want to test how many words are good enough. So we feed them sufficiently a lot Chinese characters. Also, we make sure testing and training tests are from different works or at least from different part of a work to prevent inflation in calculating sim register accuracy. For authors who only have 1 document in a register, we segment the work in 2 parts and training testing from different part. Sorry. The experiment is repeated 1,000 times for every possible candidate size. This is the result. The upper panel shows different feature set with linear SVM, and the lower with logistic regression. The dotted line represents the random chance. Random chance is the level of accuracy one could get by random guessing. The same register accuracy that are the curves in cold tone are far above the chance, but the cross-register accuracy that are the curves in rows are so close to the dotted line, the random chance. This result indicates that inferring vernacular writing style from classical pieces is hard if we use standard authorship attribution models based on function word frequency. We then examine the confusion matrices. Because the pattern is similar across subplots, we choose this one, command feature set with linear SVM arbitrarily. We look at the situation when 8 authors participate in the experiment. The rows are true label and the columns are predicted labels. Those matrices are normalized by the rows, that is the true labels, with 2 significant digits. So each row should add up to 1, and each value in the row is a probability of predicting the corresponding author at the bottom. Therefore, the diagonal value are the probability of correct classification. The left panel shows the classical to classical task, and the right one shows the classical to vernacular task. The 2 plots are directly comparable because the model are trained with the same classical text, but predict on texts of different register. In the left panel, the value on diagonal are much higher than the chance, which is 1/8. Rarely is the classifier confused by author with a similar writing style in this classical register. Here, the classifier is confused a little bit, but the probability of correct prediction still has the highest probability, 0.4. However, look at the right panel, the diagonal values, that is the probability of correct classification, are much lower. Instead, CRH tends to be predicted as author regardless of the true author. Following CRH, DG, and LY also attract incorrect attributions. Other authors receive little attention from the classifier. We then go back to the corpus and find out the reason why CRH, DG, and LY are so popular. We speculate that the difficulty of cross-register task lies in the elusive degree of vernacularization in classical texts. The process from classical to vernacular is a long continuum, roughly from the 3rd century to early 20th century. So it's fully possible that one's classical writing style is more vernacular than others. For example, CRH is well known as a vernacular novelist, so his classical writing is perhaps not the most classical among his peers. This is basically our research, and we are still working on an expanded version of this paper. We refer you to the long abstract for more details. Please feel free to ask questions or give us some feedbacks. We are very grateful for the reviewers' detailed suggestion and the organizers' efforts. Thank you for listening. Be well.